I'm Kealy and this is Voice of a Creative, and today I'm here to talk to you about the bodice fitting masterclass with Elisalex from By Hand London. So this weekend I've just got back. I spent the whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 10 till 5 at the bodice fitting masterclass. And I was really looking forward to this. So I think it was a couple of months ago that the course came up and it only had 7 places, but I managed to get a place, which is amazing. And it was at the Like So Amazing shop run by Sarah, which is in Bristol. So actually it was really convenient for me to be able to pop over there and then stay at home on the evenings so that I could learn to fit bodices. So over the course of the weekend, we were to learn to fit 3 bodices, starting with a princess seamed bodice, then a darted bodice, and then if we had time, a kimono sleeved bodice or one with grown on sleeves. So we used the Elisalex dress, the Holly jumpsuit bodice, as well as the Anna dress, and those were the 3 that we were learning to fit. So I'm just going to talk you through what we kind of did and then tell you about the adjustments that I had to make and things like that. So the first bodice that we learnt to fit was a princess seamed bodice, and that is the Elisalex dress. Now I'll put a picture of the line drawing in so you can see, but a princess bodice is basically one that you have the part of the shoulder and then the side curve of the bust is one piece, and then you've got the centre piece as well, and then at the back it's the same. So actually in terms of a bodice it's quite complicated to put together because there's that many more pieces. You've got your 2 side fronts and then your centre front, as well as your 2 centre back pieces and side back pieces. Traditionally I've found fitting these slightly easier just because you are able to fit better at the bodice here, but it is one of the more complicated ones to adjust, so that's why we started with that one. The process that we did throughout the whole weekend was to find out what size we were and then cut out that size before, and then do an adjustment if needed, and then make a mock-up basically. So with this bodice we looked at our measurements and we were taught how to take our measurements properly, and so we took the high bust and waist measurements, and actually mine were kind of half an inch to an inch out. So I'd measured my waist a little bit bigger, so I'd measured my waist at 31 when actually it was 30, and then my high bust I'd measured at 36 when actually it was 35, and then my full bust is 37 and I'd measured it at 37 and a half. I think I was adding on a little bit of extra space, just like breathing room as it were. And so then from those measurements it worked out that I picked the size 14 in the patterns, and that was kind of standard across all of the bodices that I made during the weekend. And I actually fitted really well into the By Hand London measurements. So the bust is 37 and the waist is 30 on their measurements, so that fitted really well, and that meant that it should be able to fit my shoulders quite well. And also something to remember, which we spoke a lot about during the weekend, is the By Hand London patterns are drafted to a B cup. So the B cup means that your full bust measurement is 2 inches bigger than your high bust measurement, with my high bust being 35 and my bust being 36 and a half, 37. It actually means I have got that kind of 2-inch difference there, so the pattern should fit me bust wise properly. So I didn't have to make a small bust adjustment or a full bust adjustment, but other people in the class did, and we were shown how to do that for the 3 bodices. So the process was I cut out my pattern, standard size 14, and then those that had to do a full or small bust adjustment did that before cutting into calico. So we then made a mock-up of the bodice in calico, just as you would with the 5/8 seam allowance. And then we tried it on, and Elisalex pinned us into the bodice, and then we diagnosed the fit issues. So during the first one, the princess seamed bodice on the first day, she helped quite a lot, but as it got to the end of the second day, she kind of got us to diagnose our own problems a little bit more with her support, which was actually really beneficial because it just builds up your confidence. And that was the point in the weekend. It wasn't to get a perfect fitting bodice, because actually does that even exist with ease and wrinkles that naturally occur in fabrics, and it might be different in different fabrics and things. but it was for us to be able to diagnose the problems and actually know how to sort them, and actually feel a lot more confident now than I did. And I really enjoyed the whole weekend, and it was a really fantastic opportunity to learn, and literally I have never felt like my brain has been stuffed full of so much information. It's just crazy. So the princess themed bodice, so I chose to go with the sleeved version, which is a slightly different bodice, and I did also make the non-sleeve version to compare as well. So literally just made it up like this, with different contrasting thread, just so it's really obvious, and you just kind of mark the seam line around the edge and on the bottom as well. And then we just tried it on and got pinned in. Now, once I'd got pinned in, there were a few issues that were quite obvious straight away. So firstly, my bust needed a little bit more room. And so essentially what we did, well, the piece is gone now, but we opened up the seam along my bust just a little bit and then just adjusted the seam allowance. I then adjusted the paper pattern to add that little bit on and add the seam allowance on as well. Another thing that became very quickly apparent is that I needed a narrow shoulder adjustment, so which is a surprise to me because I always thought that I would have a broad shoulder adjustment, but the pattern was coming off my shoulder a little bit here, so the point of my shoulder is more here, and it was coming off here, and also there was gaping around the neckline. So where I had gaping around the neckline and it was coming off my shoulder here, I need to do a narrow shoulder adjustment. And with that, you can see a tutorial on the By Hand London website of how to do that, but you kind of shift the shoulder up a little bit, basically. So you trace the top of the bodice and then you just adjust it by the amount you need. So you would mark on your shoulder where your shoulder point was on the mock-up and then measure that and then apply that adjustment. So I did that, and then the third adjustment I needed to make to this bodice was to actually raise the armhole because I didn't have very much movement. So when I put this bodice on, first of all, I could barely raise my arms, kind of like this, and obviously you should be able to kind of get them up here in a woven bodice. And so Elisalex suggested I raise the armhole, and I did that by 5/8 of an inch or 1.6 centimetres, and I just had to adjust the bodice pieces. So in the end, what you would do is we applied those marks to the mock-up and then you change the paper pattern pieces. Now this was a revolution for me because normally I might make adaptations to a pattern, but then I never record it anywhere, and so I totally forget whatever I've done, which is incredibly annoying. But this time we took those marks and then we applied them to the paper pattern and then made a second version to just check that those adjustments were right. And if they weren't quite right, then you would make another kind of version. I was lucky, I only had to make kind of 2 mock-ups of each bodice, but actually you may have had to do more if there were more adjustments to be made. So pattern piece wise, we used the dot and cross paper and we just added it on to the pattern. And where I've got the kind of shoulder adjustment again, I've got the paper like this where I've just adjusted it. So this is all completely together now with the pattern adjustments. Now, I did want to, as part of this video, try on the bodices for you, but because there's nobody to pin me in, you wouldn't actually see the benefits of the fit. But basically, we got it to fit really, really well. I do still need to make an adjustment slightly to the sleeve on this because we hadn't learned that yet when I put this sleeve in, but we have now learned how to do that, and so I just need to adjust the sleeve slightly just to bring it in. Because I've raised the armhole, I just need to adjust the sleeve to compensate for that. And this is my final bodice that fits really, really well. And it feels very comfortable. So previously woven garments felt a little bit uncomfortable for me, but actually that narrow shoulder adjustment is like a lifesaver. And so that's really worked well for me. So then I've got my mock-up of my princess themed bodice, and I am going to then obviously use that pattern to make a proper dress in proper fabric. Then I went home that night and I did my second mock-up of the Elisalex bodice that I'd started in the day, and then I actually went on to make the sleeveless version as well, because I wanted to try that on the next day to see what alterations I had to make. So I've got that one here. So this is made out of different fabric because this was one that I made at home. The adjustments I have to make on this one are slightly different to the adjustments that I have to make on the other bodice. The main one being that I need to do a full bust adjustment on this one. So if I just pop it on to show you, obviously it won't be done properly, but you can see here where I need the extra space. We've just seam ripped open the nipple area here, and then I would do the kind of full bust adjustment here by about 1/2 inch is what I'm going to do, because if you can see the opening there, that's how much it is. I would also do a narrow shoulder adjustment, so there's marks on the shoulder here to show how much I would have to do that by, and I'm also going to do a sway back adjustment on this one. Now, I could tell that we needed to do the sway back adjustment, and we've marked it on the back there. And basically, the back of the bodice just hit my waist and it started to fold itself up, basically. So if the fabric hits you on the back and it just folds itself up, it means you need to do a sway back adjustment. And literally all we did was mark a pencil line, and then we would redraw that bodice line along the pencil line and add the seam allowance. But again, there are lots of tutorials for that out there. So that one I've learnt of it. I haven't altered the pattern for that one yet, but I will do, and then I will make another mock-up of that bodice. Then on the second day, we started with the darted bodice. So that was the holly jumpsuit pattern that we used. But what we did is that pattern has a placket at the front. So we just cut it on the fold with the centre front and added seam allowance to the back piece to move the join to the back. 'Cause it's just easier to fit this way. This was our chance to practice sleeves again as well. My final bodice is this one. So surprisingly, it fitted fairly well first of all. I didn't have to do anything playing about with the darts or moving the apex of the bodice at all. But I did have to do another narrow shoulder adjustment. I did do a sway back adjustment to the back of this one. And I also... No, that was it on this one. So this one I just did a narrow shoulder adjustment and then a sway back adjustment. I didn't have to do anything else because the darts fitted really nicely across my chest. So that was really good, and I've altered the pattern so that I can just kind of go ahead with that. And it is a really lovely fitted bodice with the darts there as well. So that one went really well. Then I was quite good with my time management, and I managed to get on to the final bodice, which was the Anna dress bodice. Now this is one that has grown on sleeves. So if I just show you the mock-up, so you can see the shoulder is just fully attached to give you this lovely style here. And also this one has a slightly different pleating detail at the front to really give a really lovely detail. It's supposed to look like a little bit like a flower petal once it's ironed and sorted. Now, I haven't had a chance to adjust the pattern for this one, so this was my first mock-up of it. And I chose to go for the V-neck version. And with this one, a few other adjustments. So again, a slight sway back adjustment. Seems to be a regular thing. Again, a narrow shoulder adjustment, but with this one as well, I needed to do a forward shoulder adjustment, or just move the shoulder seam forward. So we noticed that the shoulder seam was really quite far back, and so I've had to adjust that. And to do that, I literally took an amount off the back and basically added it to the front. And so I've still got to adjust my pattern for that, but I'm going to give that a go. But it fits really nicely over my chest and around my waist as well. So overall, really super pleased that I attended that course. I am really tired after the whole weekend of having my mind absolutely blown. It was amazing the amount of things you can learn, and actually the understanding of the slash and spread method for altering patterns and things like that. And I'm definitely interested in getting into fitting a little bit more, and definitely sewing a few more woven garments after I've kind of gone through this. And I definitely feel a bit more confident about my body shape and how I can alter patterns that actually really fit me well on the shoulder. And I think I'll be trying that out a little bit more this summer if I've got a chance. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please press the thumbs up and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Goodbye!